some quick intros. So my name is Josh Bocao. I'm part of the platform team here at Salesforce. Been here for almost 5 years now. So with platform, we cover things like data services, integrations, application development, security, all that good stuff. And so today, what we're going to be talking about is using an agility layer to help support, complement Salesforce. And for today, we're going to be using Heroku as that agility layer. And I was actually speaking to our partners over at RadialSpark, and like they do this all the time. So I was like, wow, this is actually like a great opportunity for them to host this, since they do this all the time, rather than getting somebody that's kind of like fluent at it. I'd rather just get somebody that's fully fluent at it to provide the best services. So that's why we have Mike and Justin here today. So how about Justin? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, quick introduction for myself. My name is Justin Ludlow. I am the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder for RadialSpark. Mike and I often joke he is the salesman, I am the product. You can think of me as the darkroom coder, the propeller hat, the puzzle solver. Mike is the one that makes sure I don't spend an irresponsible amount of money solving those problems. Mike, you want to say a couple words as well, sir?
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Rockford. As Justin said, he acts as our CTO and our Chief Technology Officer, or our Chief Technical Architect here for Salesforce Solutions. Despite Justin underselling my technical ability, since I actually started as a developer in this industry a decade ago, but between just the two of us, you have about like 20 years of Salesforce and Heroku experience. And so for today, we've got something interesting to go with you guys. We've got a brief presentation, 15 to 20 minutes. I'll try to keep it pretty short, but then Justin's prepared a walkthrough demonstration that should take about 30 minutes, maybe even a little bit less, that you guys can follow along with to set up a basic data agility layer. And the reason we're doing that is to show you how quickly and easy a lot of these tools can be cobbled together, because for people who are in the Salesforce industry who know, live, breathe Salesforce, and when they hear Heroku, they're like, man, that sounds like an awesome sushi joint. I'd love to go dine there. Or they're like, I have no idea, this is really scary. And we just kind of want to show you guys like to get started with this and start experimenting with how you can expose your data, leverage it, integrate with it. All these wonderful things that the Salesforce platform as a whole allows you to do is something that shouldn't be scary, and something that you guys can get started with on your own. And then with some support with us or other partners, you definitely can go very far with it. So Justin, if you want to kick off the presentation, and we can probably scroll through a little bit of it.
Just really quickly, I'm watching the
Q&A.
Josh. Yeah, I'm just watching the Q&A. So if anybody has questions as we go on, I'll be taking a look at that, and I can ask Justin and Michael as we go. Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate if you'll moderate that, Josh, just because I am working on a one-screen setup over here. All right.
Oh, and I'm gonna get mobbed by my dogs.
And there we go. All right. Share screen. And I'm going to be using a couple tools when we get into the demo. So I'm actually going to do a full screen share. All right. Can everybody see my screen? Mike, Josh, can you guys see it?
Yep.
Looks good.
All right, perfect. So, all right, guys, before I actually get into just the meat and potatoes of this presentation, as a quick shout out, if you look, I've got this up as a website over here at RadialSpark. We've gotten a little sick of the traditional PowerPoint slide format. So we like to make these kind of scrollable presentation pages. This will be a publicly accessible link. I'll be sharing this with Josh, and he'll be able to disseminate that. So if you want to come back and look at any of the content that we go over here, you will be able to revisit it. Just a quick call out there. All right. So without further ado, let's get into this Heroku data agility layer.
Yeah.
So Michael and I had a chance to introduce ourselves, but a little bit about who we are as a company. We were established in 2016. Both Michael and I originally cut our teeth primarily on the Force.com platform as Salesforce developers before actually banging our heads against some very specific data issues where we were getting very creative on Force.com implementations. Things like chaining asynchronous context from asynchronous context in order to handle automated processes that had to touch on millions of records. And that's where we sort of, as an organization, stumbled across Heroku and realized its power to complement the platform. And it ended up becoming a very important flag in the ground for our niche and our expertise in terms of being able to deliver data intensive cross-platform solutions. So we are a registered Salesforce and Heroku partner. We are specialists in heavy, complicated implementations. We've got experience with Sales, Service, Pardot, CPQ, Financial Services Cloud, Health Cloud, Experience Cloud, as well as custom application development on Heroku, augmenting those pieces. Our entire full-time staff are certified developers here in the United States. We have Heroku architecture designers, system architects, application architects. We are first and foremost, if you can't tell from the bullet points, an engineering firm. We are a bunch of nerds that like solving complicated problems around data. All right. Just a couple clients, because it wouldn't be an enablement session if we didn't have a brief plug. So these are some of the customers that we've worked with here to help on data-related experiences using Heroku. And I did include this slide. I didn't know if Josh was going to have us introduce ourselves in the presentation, or if we were going to do this as we got into it. I won't go through this. We've kind of talked about who we are personally. As you can see, unfortunately, my beard is not as great as it used to be. Lost my wizardry, but the magic is still there. So without further ado, let's kind of get into it and ask the basic question. How does Heroku enable data agility? So for those of you that have spent a lot of time on the Force.com platform, you're going to be familiar with platform governor limits, a lot of the things that you have to operate in order to be a responsible kid in the sandbox, if you will. Salesforce is a multi-tenant platform. The data storage, the resources that we use to operate on Salesforce are shared across multiple customers. So there's reasonable limitations put on all sorts of things in order to make sure you're not hogging resources. But as you scale and as you develop more complex and robust processes, you start to butt up against those limits. Key ones that we see a lot that are critically important when it comes to data agility are going to be Salesforce API limits, Salesforce data storage limits, orchestrating processes that need to touch on large amounts of data. As I mentioned, we discovered Heroku because we were supporting a customer that we were brought in to help them with the territory management process. And for any of you who have ever done territory assignments or things like that, you're probably familiar with the on-platform Salesforce features. We had a customer that needed to do that, but they were touching on 12 million records. And so as you can imagine right there, DML limits, query limits, the amount of things you can do in a synchronous context, we hit that a lot. And so we had to chain asynchronous context, and something that they wanted to have happen in a couple hours ended up taking longer than a day. You take that off platform, you put, hey, Michael, is that you?
Yeah, I said it took 3 days to process. We, in 48 hours, Justin and I had to re-architect the solution, actually with my wife as well. We're a huge family of nerds. We had to re-architect the solution, and it took 3 full days, 72 hours to run just solely on Salesforce.
Yep, to territory manage 12 million records. And that's where we realized, okay, if we could take this off platform in a connected way, throw it in a multi-threaded application, something in Java maybe, we could break up the data processing, parallelize some of the pieces, execute it faster. And that's where the appeal of Heroku first dawned on Michael and myself. Michael, did you want to jump in or chime in? Otherwise, I'll keep charging ahead.
Yeah. So pretty much, guys, like the point of this and what we're going to go through here with some use cases is that the ability for Salesforce, your Salesforce platform, to go wider with Heroku is not very difficult to get started with, and it gives you a lot of advantages. So here, if we click on one of these drop downs, like the dance around your Salesforce API limits, one of the big issues that we see with a lot of our customers is that their data is stuck in Salesforce, and they're unable to readily get access to it because they have, for example, a large customer base, and they want to expose this in, community, formerly Community or Experience Cloud, but their customer base is so large that, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people accessing their web portal continuously, and it's just really slowing down their Salesforce org, or it's effectively bringing down their Experience Cloud app because there's too many API hits, right? For their mobile app, their web platform that they're trying to expose and give access to this data. So it's not tenable. Or we've had other cases where they have third party, whether they be vendors or like dealers or other things, which you can't really control how they're going to interact with your data. They need to be able to see, let's say you have Salesforce order management, right? They need to be able to submit orders. They need to be able to submit tickets. They need to be able to do a wide number of stuff that Salesforce is great at. But you can't control how they're going to do it. And your team needs to use your Salesforce app too. So you've got these third-party vendors, these third-party partners that are just blowing up your APIs, and you're not able to architect around what they're going to do because they're independent. They have their own IT teams, right? Or you just have a large number of applications. You're a very mature Salesforce, or you're a very large customer. You're the enterprise space. You have thousands of employees. You have all these apps, a huge IT team, and you use Salesforce for everything. And it does, from time tracking to HR management to orders to whatever you guys have thought up, right? Because you can get really creative with the Salesforce platform, and it's just starting to become overwhelming. So getting your data exposed onto a Heroku Postgres database, leveraging, and you can see in this diagram here, Heroku Connect and or Salesforce Connect, allows you to platform this data in a way that it's easily accessible by third-party vendors, by your mobile app, by your web app, integrating legacy third-party or legacy data storage, your modern external systems, whatever it might be. Like, it just gives you a way to give that data at exposition and avoid and dance around Salesforce API limits, because Heroku Connect and Salesforce Connect are not subjected to Salesforce API limits. So Heroku Connect, and we'll go into detail of what the difference between these two tools, because I know they're named very, very specifically. But we'll go in a little bit more detail down the road, and we can talk about that. So moving on, we already kind of touched on this a bit, breaking out complex processes. So another thing, since Salesforce is a multi-tenant platform, you've got front-end languages like Lightning. You can use a Lightning design system to build great front-end custom applications. You can build full web apps that use Angular, use React, Vue, whatever you want. You can host that UI UX now on Salesforce. It's very straightforward to do that. And they've got a pretty decent object-oriented programming language that's not fully fleshed out like Java, but is a Java-like language called Apex, for those of you guys who are familiar. And you're able to do a lot of back-end customization in this platform. But you're in a multi-tenant space. You're in an apartment, and then you've got another company in an apartment right next door. You can't just break down the wall and take their electricity. You can't just grab their main wire or grab their internet cable. I'm like, we're just going to steal that and just tie into the wall. Salesforce is going to lock you out of that. And so they limit you on how much data you can process at a time. As an example, with the that Justin brought up earlier with the customer that we had, one of the limits that the original architecture we had that they were running up on was a DML limit, which you're only allowed to update in one execution context, 10,000 records. And for most people that are doing basic CRM things, 10,000 is more than enough. But in this particular case, where each one of the reps was being assigned 1 million leads a quarter, and reassigned it, on various frequencies when they add new reps and whatnot. They run this very complex process to reassign this territory management process. It blew up. Salesforce was like, nope, 10,000 is the limit. You can't do it. And so that's where Justin and I had to get very creative back in the pre-Heroku days in order to get Salesforce to do that. And we got it to work. Salesforce will do it. It just took 3 days, actual literal 3 days for it to run. Where we do this on Heroku, it takes, a couple of minutes to process that kind of data. So breaking out complex processes, complex apps that you want is really easy when you set up this data agility layer, because you're taking your CRM data, you're duplicating it over to a Postgres database, you're keeping it in sync, and then you can build whatever app or process you want on that side. And then we'll go to the final piece, which this is a bit of a catch-all, unifying your data without storing it in Salesforce. So again, getting that data exposed onto this data agility layer. And so occasionally you want to move some of this data out. Like, it's in Salesforce, you're using Salesforce for everything, but you don't need it there. A lot of the terms that I like to use when I'm working with customers when we're talking about architecting systems is this data CRM actionable? Are your sales reps, are your customer service reps engaging with this data and modifying it on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly, whatever it is? Are they modifying or leveraging it periodically? Is this something we can archive? Is this something that they need to have visibility to, but not modify? And depending on the answers to some of those questions, we can extricate some of that data off of Salesforce, expose it back without impacting your data storage, which is a big issue with a bunch of customers where they just leverage terabytes of data on Salesforce, which is very expensive, needlessly so, unlike doing it on a Postgres database on Heroku, which is extremely inexpensive. And once they do that and like, hey, some of the CRM data that we have doesn't need to be here, or some of this non-CRM data rather doesn't need to be here. Like, we can archive it, we can move it, we can not fully cold store it, because we still want to look at it, use it potentially, but we're not daily interacting with this stuff. We can host it over on Heroku Postgres. And then once that's done, depending on the maturity of your organization or your IT infrastructure, you might have other systems that you're like, wow, it would be really good if I could create a combined view of these different data sources that are related to the type of stuff that I'm working with here, and expose that back into CRM, but without duplicating it and, again, blowing up my data storage with Salesforce. One of the common things that we find is anyone that deals with large volumes of transactions, whether you're in retail consumer goods, whether you're just dealing with a lot of transactional data, credit card payments, information, things like that, just a lot of small records, but that roll up to customer accounts, business accounts, whatever they might be, that tends to blow up people's data storage. Leads too, like a lot of leads and prospecting data too, tends to just explode Salesforce data storage. Tasking information blows up Salesforce data storage. These are the things that are common offenders on the Salesforce side, because there's a lot of small records, like a lot of little pieces of data. But that, since Salesforce has the way they treat data is every record is 2 kilobytes, regardless of its size, that's how they charge you. You don't have that problem on Postgres. Small records are small, big records are big. There's no flat unit structure that they do. And so you're like, man, it'd be great if I could expose that back into my CRM, and so I could see it. This is what Heroku's for. You synchronize your data with Heroku Connect and Salesforce Connect, and you're able to bidirectionally pull and push that data back into Salesforce. And depending on how it's architected, not all of that data needs to be copied back over into Salesforce. You can take it out, or you could put it back in a way that doesn't impact that data storage. And you can combine it with other data sources as well to keep that data storage down. So this is what this data agility layer will allow you to do. There's many other things you can use Heroku for, but data is like the biggest piece that has a huge impact across verticals and organizations. Justin, you want to add anything, or we can move on?
Just real quick on my side, Michael. So you touched on a lot of data, right, that you could archive. So I see a lot of customers with a lot of files and attachments. So how could that, could this
yeah. That's a great question. And again, files and attachments and records like this, setting up that Postgres database to because you could store files and attachments directly in Postgres, depending on the volume that they have. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that as a primary solution, but often these files and attachments are attached to specific records, whether they be accounts, contacts, opportunities, orders, you know what it is, they're PDFs, contracts, things like that. So you'll still want to export the records themselves, not just the attachments. You want to export the records so they're linked into a Postgres, and then you can on the Heroku marketplace, there are several solutions that allow you to do file storage. And you can have that hosted in one spot and move that off of force.com. And again, seamlessly link that back. There's also
tag in if you want, Mike.
Yeah, and there's also Salesforce App Exchange apps too, depending, like if it's just files and attachments, like if that's the only thing you're worried about, there's other applications too that you can leverage just in the Salesforce marketplace, the App Exchange, to simplify and reduce your data storage costs. You can go from here.
So to just build on what Mike had laid out there, not so well kept secret, but maybe a little known fact, Heroku's built on top of AWS, which provides some pretty cool things you can do with cloud IT. So you can do file storage in Postgres with blob storage. That's something that we've done for several customers in the past. You can use S3 bucket add-ons that are available directly from the Heroku Elements Marketplace, which is the Heroku App Exchange, if you will. And if you are potentially having already your own AWS with S3 buckets, things like that, you can actually set up VPC peering between your Heroku instance and your AWS and access and store your data in those very same S3 buckets in a secure manner. So there are several really cool ways that you can handle file storage.
So Josh, does that help?
It does. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Justin, let's move on here because I want to give you as much time.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's put some gas into it.
So we've looked at this diagram in a couple of places where we have Salesforce, a couple of arrows, Heroku Connect, Salesforce Connect. What does this mean? So for those of you guys who aren't aware, Heroku Connect is a data synchronization tool. And what it does is data duplication. So it takes your Salesforce data and it duplicates it in near real time. It replicates it from Salesforce to a Heroku Postgres database. When you update on either side, and you can configure it too, if you only want it to go one way, you can do that. But generally we see two-way connections. When you configure it on either side, add data, remove data, edit data, it uses Salesforce's streaming API that circumvents Salesforce's traditional API limits to synchronize that data. And when we say near real time, here it says in real time, it's near real time. If you're doing large volumes, like 1 million rows at once, it'll take a while to process it through. But if you're doing one, it takes seconds, right? Like just like a REST call.
No asterisk that, Mike.
Yeah.
For the tech savvy members of our audience, Heroku Connect works as a streaming data connector, not as a messaging bus. So when Mike's saying, like, if you're moving millions of records, if you do that as 1 million one record transactions, it'll take some time to process. If it is a single 1 million record transaction, it will happen surprisingly fast. So proper design using this tool, you can still get great performance out of it at large scale.
Correct. Thank you, Justin, for that, because it's an important caveat, because we've seen people try to use it as a messaging bus and you will overload the system. However, Heroku has tools to do messaging like Redis, like Kafka, to manage some of that, like, excuse me. Sorry about that. To manage, it's just allergies. To manage that kind of ephemeral data storage where you don't need to store it in permanence and you need to pass a lot of messages back and forth. Like you can use caching, and you can use a true messaging system like Kafka to do that, and that's also supported on Heroku. Now, Salesforce Connect, even though they both say connects and they both have bidirectional arrows, is not quite the same thing as Heroku Connect. Salesforce Connect doesn't work on a per row basis. It doesn't care how many rows you're doing. It is a per database connection. So it's per connection. So it takes one Salesforce org and connects it to one Heroku database. You could use it. It doesn't have to be Heroku. It could be any data source that supports OData 4.0 standards. So it uses an OData adapter. And what this does is this allows you to expose data from an external data source and virtualize it in your Salesforce org. So what does that mean? That means that you have Salesforce records, objects that you guys see that you're familiar with, that you can update, edit, view, run some basic reports on. It has some limitations, but they don't actually exist in your Salesforce org. Your sales rep, your customer service rep won't have any idea. It looks exactly like a Salesforce record. Like they won't be able to tell. But on the back end, it does this voodoo magic for those who aren't familiar with how OData works to expose this data and whatnot. And this is a great tool for, I don't want to call it archiving, but taking data. This is what I was talking about, that non-transactional, daily updated data, like stuff that you just need to see and maybe update occasionally. But you don't need to store in Salesforce. This is a great use for that. So whether it's your third-party system data, whether it's some old like orders or line items and stuff that they're fixed in time, like they can't be changed. They've already been pre-sold, but I want to see the history, like history records and things like that. But you might need to update for like RMAs or something. It's a very useful tool for that kind of stuff when you have larger and larger data volumes. So with the two of these tools combined, Heroku Connect and Salesforce Connect, it really gives you a lot of options on how to leverage, manipulate, and synchronize your data back to Salesforce in the most optimal way possible. So Justin, I know we started a little late, so let's just keep going through this. Unless anyone has questions.
I have a quick question for you guys.
Yeah.
With Heroku, can you connect other data sets for syncing back and forth?
Yes. So the way you do it, and I'll give you the short answer. So the way Heroku Connect works and or Salesforce Connect, they both link to a database, and they link to a specific schema on the Postgres side. That schema needs to be a mirror of what Salesforce is for Heroku Connect's sake. So like your accounts need to look exactly the same as your ones on a Heroku. They don't need to be exactly the same. They need to be at least a subset. Like you can't add new stuff and then hope it comes back. It'll break the connection. But you can create multiple schemas within a single database. You can have multiple databases. So if you need to sync other data and then leverage these tools, you just build an app on top of that to manage that, or you host an ETL tool, or there's a bunch of different ways you can skin that cat, for the lack of a better term, in order to make that happen and leverage these two connectors to push the data back into Salesforce. And does that answer that question, Josh?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. And also for those who are getting much more sophisticated, if you just need a place to host this data and then you've got very complex or a large number of third-party systems, you might want to look at MuleSoft too, to pull that data also into Heroku, because MuleSoft will also connect to Heroku and Salesforce directly, or one or the other. And so this tool, this data agility layer, allows you to pretty much do whatever you want, like whatever makes the most sense for your organization. And MuleSoft will help enhance that experience if you're really getting into a lot of different connections. So let's keep moving.
Yep. All right. I think we're getting into some specific use cases here. Mike, do you want me to start talking through some of these, or would you like to continue?
So yeah, let me continue, because I want to, like, we're at 12:30 right now, or 9:30 your time. I want to make sure I give you enough time to do the hands-on walkthrough. So here, guys, and you guys will be receiving this link. We've got a couple of different use cases, one of which is data archival, which I kind of touched on a little bit earlier. Again, there's like, we're using the two tools, Heroku Connect and Salesforce Connect, in order to facilitate, it looks like we do. Does Salesforce Connect support NoSQL databases? So Salesforce Connect, so Heroku supports NoSQL databases. So Salesforce Connect supports anything that has an OData 4 endpoint. So you can hook up, you can customize a NoSQL solution, so long as that the endpoint is compatible and the data can be translated and mapped back into Salesforce. Like, there's no reason you can't use a NoSQL database to hook that up. it's just data storage to data storage. So it doesn't have to be, and Justin had to step away for a second. So
I am back. I
yeah.
apologize. Had to let the
Yeah,
dogs out.
so the question was, is that does Salesforce Connect support NoSQL? And my answer was yes, with an asterisk, that you would have to do some work in order to make sure that that you can do it. But Heroku in and of itself does support NoSQL, and so long as the OData 4 endpoint is of a sufficient structure to support what Salesforce is expecting, there's no reason why you can't hook it up to any data source.
Yeah. So as long as you have an OData 4.0 interface, and for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with the term Salesforce Connect, but maybe you've worked with external objects, that's basically the same thing. So if you're using a NoSQL data structure, you might have to develop the OData interface yourself to make that available. But as long as you have an OData 4.0 compliant API, it doesn't matter what the data source is, you can bring it in. Now, the most convenient form of Salesforce Connect does work with a Postgres database, because you can literally go in, pick the table from the schema you connect to, just check a box, and it will automatically create the external object in Salesforce, pull the columns from your Postgres and make them fields on the external object. It will configure lookup relationships between external objects, as well as between standard or custom objects and external objects. So there's a very feature-rich set for SQL data on Postgres through Salesforce Connect, but anywhere you have an OData 4.0 connection, you can use that.
So moving on with this, so as not to use too much time, if you guys are interested in learning more about this, like there's a description here of how this diagram works. I'm going to spend like 10 seconds talking about it. The TLDR is that we take the Salesforce org, we sync it with Heroku Connect, and we pull that data into a Postgres database. We might want to have some web app or some third-party app to re-expose that data that we want if we need to do some data deduplication or whatever it might be. We can hook that up on Heroku. And then we set up, it doesn't have to be a separate Postgres database, just another schema. Like you can use multiple databases. Again, many ways to do this, depending on your specific needs. Like there's different recommendations, but you have another data source that you're going to use, and you use Salesforce Connect to sync that data back to Salesforce org once you're done with this archival process, or however you want to archival or store it or manipulate it. And this removes that data from your Salesforce org, but it's still there. Like, so with the same OData 4.0 connection, like it still looks and feels like it's there, but it's no longer impacting your dollar figure with your Salesforce spend in that way. And it also frees it up for you to be able to do other things with it. Moving on to other use cases, because I do in the next couple of minutes want to hand this off. So another use case is that once you have your data outside of Salesforce and you integrate it with Heroku Connect into Postgres, you can build mobile and web apps off of it. The real cool thing about this, there's a lot of use cases to do this. It's mobile, web, however you want. The thing that we love, at least how we perform and build our apps, is that when you build apps on Heroku and you already have Salesforce, the administration of those apps, whether it's user management or just basic application management, you don't need to build that half of the application. We just use Salesforce to do it. And we use Heroku Connect to synchronize that data, whether it's configuration settings, users, passwords, different types of records, security updates, whatever it might be. Most of that's done through Salesforce's GUI. Like you're able to just go in and configure it. And we use a data-driven process to do that. And once that data and metadata is synced over through Heroku Connect and a Heroku Postgres, that percolates up to your web apps and mobile apps. There's a lot of stuff we could go into here. This is like the real value I find if you need to have customer facing or partner experiences that directly tie to your CRM. Heroku is the best tool to do that, because you're quicker to market, you're faster to develop this type of stuff. And because of how easy it is to get that data out of Salesforce with these tools and synchronize it back, you're able to do things that other traditional web development platforms just can't do. Like if you try to do this on raw AWS, you have to, and you try to architect it the way that I just described, you have to hit the API every time you make updates. And that's, like, again, inefficient from a Salesforce limits and a multi-tenant architecture standpoint. This just allows that seamless connection. So, and sorry, since we started a little late, we're a little rushed here. Go ahead. Let's just move on.
Yep.
So here's another great use case. I don't know if anyone here has multiple Salesforce orgs. This is a common use case we see for whether your business has gone through a merger or acquisition, and you inherited a Salesforce org, but you already had one, whether you had a specific division. We see this a lot too, that is under the same umbrella, that works on the same accounts, but does something completely different, right? Or does something like significantly different. But they're still working at the same account, the same contacts, but each unit is kind of working in a silo. They kind of know who's doing what, but they're not really able to share these opportunities, cross-sell, upsell, across divisions. So we've built a multi-org connector that allows you to synchronize multiple Salesforce orgs. We've done up to 72 Salesforce org. Yes, we had a customer with 72 Salesforce orgs. And we were able to synchronize all that data into a single Heroku app to curate and manage that and push that out to the orgs that needed to see that specific data and keep everything in sync. And the way we did that is almost entirely through Salesforce Connect and Heroku Connect. And we go into detail here in this slide about how this works, how you do that, being able to, again, stand up web and mobile apps so that you can manipulate, expose that data, APIs or whatnot between your multiple Salesforce orgs. But this is a very cool use case with data agility on how to get your multiple orgs talking to each other, how you share data between them, and really just go wider with that data. So we'll move on for this.
Yeah, and I was going to say, if you don't mind me jumping in there, what I wanted to do.
Justin, I was thinking maybe we pause here and we get started on the walkthrough, and then if we've got time at the end, we can review some of this stuff.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to be able to fit this in just fine. So I just wanted to wrap up this use case very quickly with a bow. Once you establish a data bridge on Heroku connecting these orgs, one of the things that's very cool you can do is then you can take that partner customer community idea and layer it on top of that combined data. So if you have multiple departments, multiple lines of business that are all working with the same customer base, you can give that customer a single place to understand their complete relationship across all your departments, as well as for you to present those cross-sell, upsell opportunities that you identified through this shared data to begin with. So very cool, very powerful stuff. Now, we do have a recent article that I'm not going to touch on, but when we share this link out, this is an example for that 72 org use case that was also incorporating Kafka for handling data at scale. So if you want to read into that, by all means, you'll be able to click in and reference this later, but we are going to skip over it for the purposes of this. Now,
so Justin, why don't you jump in on the demo because we got 15 minutes. Yep.
So to change gears, I'm going to take us into a quick demo where I'm actually going to set up a Heroku app and demonstrate Heroku Connect, kind of show you guys just how easy and painless this is to do. In order to set it up, I've got a code base that I've already deployed. That's kind of why I've come here. The plan stack is our cutesy name for the open source technology stack that we have compiled for development on Heroku. So the code base that I'm going to be using to deploy an app is built on this plan stack. All you need to know is that it stands for PostgreSQL, Loopback, which is our API framework, Angular, which is our UI framework, but we're not going to be using it because we're talking about data agility here, and that this entire app is ultimately developed with Node. So without further ado, let's get to our starting line. Over here, I have a Salesforce Scratch org that I've set up. I'm actually going to refresh this tab, make sure that my access is still valid. Beautiful. You'll notice that I've got 5 accounts that I've already preloaded in here. So I've got some account data that I want to expose in Heroku. I want to be able to access it through an API so I can integrate it without worrying about API limits. I potentially want to archive it in the future. How do I go about getting that done? So first, we'll go into Heroku, and you'll notice I'm in my team. We've got a lot of different apps. We're just going to create a brand new app. I'm going to call this our Data Agility Demo app. It's going to confirm that that name is available. I'm going to create it, and it's going to take us inside our application management space, this dashboard here. Now, no code has been pushed. Currently, nothing exists inside of this app. There's no infrastructure, no compute, nothing's happening. So we're going to provision some resources we need. First off, let's get a database because we need to store this stuff in a database. I'm going to grab a Postgres database, costing you $5, Mike. Hope you don't mind.
Oh, we're broke.
I'm going to get our Heroku Connect instance. And just because it's best practice, I'm going to give ourselves a logging tool as well so that I can look at any issues that might come up. Now, this is all point and click. These things are now stood up, provisioned, and in effect. Additionally, if I go into my settings and I want to go take a look at my cloud environment variables, I'll see that my database connection URL has been provided to me. My Papertrail API token has been set up. So everything I need to actually interact with the stuff that I just had provisioned for my app has been provided to me. Now, I am going to go and add a quick extra variable here because I am not going to configure SSL certs for this demo. All right. But with this setup here, I have my database. I have my Heroku Connect, which I need to configure, and I have a logging infrastructure. So I'm going to go into my Heroku Connect so I can actually feed data into this database. And I'm going to set up a connection. I'm going to use the standard Salesforce schema name, and I'm going to use the database that's attached through that database URL config var. It's going to go through a couple steps. It's a scratch org, so we're actually connecting through the test domain. I'm going to go ahead and click authorize. This is going to take me to the web login flow that you're all familiar with. Now, to get my scratch org credentials, I'm actually going to come in here, go into my command line here from my local project. This is an SFDX project that I have. So I'm going to go SFDX org display. This is going to give me my user credentials once it loads. There we go. So I'm going to get my username. And I'm going to get the password that I generated for my scratch org user. And I'm going to log in. And this has now connected Heroku Connect to that scratch org, to this org here. So I haven't configured any mappings, haven't done anything. So as of the moment, I'm not syncing anything yet. I'm going to go in and I'm going to create a mapping. Again, the data I want to share is account data. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to select account. I'm going to support bidirectional polling. I am going to use the external ID. I am going to use created date, Salesforce ID, and name, the external ID for write back. And we're just going to stick with those fields for the purpose of this demo. I'm going to go ahead and save this mapping. It's going to take a moment, but you're going to see that it's creating some columns. It's setting up the database. It has identified 5 accounts in Salesforce and has now synced them into my database. So these are now in Heroku Postgres. When we're talking real time, near real time, that's how fast this happens. So how do I do something with this on Heroku? This is going back to our application. We need to deploy our code base to do whatever it is we want to do with our account data. So I'm going to go back here into my local command line. and I'm going to take ourselves over to a starter application that we regularly use here at RadialSpark. Good. I'm going to add this Heroku project as a remote, something very cool. Deploying your applications to Heroku is as simple as pushing to a master branch on remote. It's one of the coolest things that I've seen. All right. All right, I now have my Heroku remote. I have my code base already configured, so I don't actually need to write a lot of code or do anything particularly fancy. I'm going to run and then so I'm pushing my local development branch up to Heroku's master branch. That is triggering a build. This is actually the build logs from Heroku as it goes through the steps, letting us know what's happening. So it is deploying and building the application. We're going to give it a second to execute. And now it's going to compress and launch. All right. So if I come back to my Heroku dashboard, I will see that I have a build that just ran that has been deployed. And I can actually click this Open App button. This is going to pull up Data Agility Demo, HerokuApp.com. So this is the code base I just pushed up. We don't need the Heroku Connect tab anymore. And I can open the API Explorer that's included. This is all part of that loopback framework I was mentioning and why I touched on the plan stack briefly. So in here, this is showing me some accounts API endpoints that I had created in order to manipulate this data on Postgres. So if I come in here and I look at our accounts count, I just want to see how many accounts I have in the system. I can go ahead, click try it out. I'm going to get rid of any filter criteria because I'm not particularly worried about it. I'm going to hit execute and it's going to give me a response and it's going to let me know, hey, you have 5 accounts here in your database in your system. If I want to request a specific account, I can kind of come down to my get accounts endpoint. I can try this one out. I can get rid of the ordering because I don't really mind about that. I can say where name is my account. And just for proof, we can see we do have an account, my account. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to just request, hey, give me the record that's named my account. And I want all of these fields as part of it. So if I execute this, I'm going to come back, get the Postgres ID of this account record, which is 3, the Salesforce ID, which if we come back over here and I open this up, we'll see that it actually matches this record ID. So we can now query and manipulate it. And none of these API calls that we're making here actually hit the Salesforce API. So we're not doing any Salesforce processing at this point. Now, let's talk about that near real time for a quick second, since the whole point of this is data agility. Let's go into our accounts. I want to go back to my list and let's make a few more accounts. Let's make his account, her account, and their account. So some brand new accounts literally just created in Salesforce. I'm going to go back over to my application. I'm going to go back up to my account endpoint here. Let's try executing this again. All right, we're still seeing 5. Let's give it a little more time. Little more time. Ooh. Hopefully I don't have caching turned on. I might have caching turned on.
Just refresh the website then.
Yep.
Oh, you have count. No.
Okay, why is, I apologize for the technical difficulty, guys.
You might not have set up the polling. So go check the Heroku connection. Just make sure you poll for it. Because the demo ones don't automatically have polling.
Yeah, it should have had the accelerated polling. I could have browser caching turned up. I did just double check this morning. Why did this not fire for the extra rows? Edit. We do have accelerated polling with minimum frequency. Save. There we go. Now we're seeing the rows. Took a moment.
Yeah, it's the test version. I always find that sometimes they don't poll unless you kick it. The production ones are much more expedient.
All right. We'll give it a little time for Heroku Connect to finish doing its thing. Should be coming across shortly. Why have these poll now? There we go. Yeah, for some reason that was not using the accelerated polling despite the setting being turned on. If we execute this now, we'll see the count has been updated to 8. If I want to come down here and again, request one of those new accounts. And I can say, give me one of the accounts I made was his account. If we execute, I will get that record back with its Salesforce ID and its Postgres ID. And then if I have other external IDs, things set up. Now, unfortunately, because of the slow polling there, which it was not doing for me earlier today, I didn't get to demonstrate it. But near real time for singular data transactions usually means 3 to 5 seconds. It actually happens very, very quickly. We are using the free tier of this, and I'll be honest, I have abused this several times, so I might be getting throttled. But just with that point and click configuration, getting that set up, it handles the plumbing between Salesforce and Heroku. I can have my application built on top of Salesforce data, living in Heroku, and then I can expose that and use that in other places without hitting any of my Salesforce governor limits or resources.
And the cool thing too, with this UI that you guys are looking at, so this is, again, like Justin had mentioned previously, this is part of our loopback framework, which is open source. Any APIs you guys add to any object will show up here. So when we're talking about setting up data connectivity to external services, to a web app you want to build, it's all here. You'll see like all of your objects and all the schemas and all of the REST calls that you want, and you can customize them. You get some out of the box, but you can customize different calls right here, and it's all self-documenting, and it gives you this UI format. So when you're talking about quickness to market and working with multiple teams to develop your APIs that sit on top of this, like this is a powerful tool. Looks like we got a couple of questions. So using Heroku Connect, you were able to select an object, replicate out to external database based on record events are updated both ways, then spun up a scaffolding for an API that can do CRUD against that object. Just wanted to get a better understanding. Yes, that's effectively what we're doing. Yeah.
That's exactly what we've done. A CRUD REST API from a scaffolded application, Heroku Connect, moving that Salesforce data over so that you can CRUD it from Heroku. Salesforce Connect can see, or Heroku Connect rather, can see the changes on Heroku and push them back to Salesforce.
So we're at time here. And Justin, was there anything else you wanted to show?
I had nothing from the demo. We did have our last little plug about our data health check that I wanted to make sure we.
So we'll jump into that really quick.
Yes.
So I got yeah. So we talked about So we talked about that plan stack. We talked about Salesforce Connect. We talked about Heroku Connect. We talked about all these fun tools. You know, some are free, some are paid for, right? But despite any of the tools that you guys get, none of them matter if your data is garbage. So garbage in, garbage out, as a lot of people say. And so one thing that we provide here at RadialSpark is a data quality assessment. And honestly, we've partnered with a company called Active Prime. They have a Heroku add-on marketplace general availability applet that you can deploy that can read your Postgres data. So when you set up your data agility layer and you're like, man, we're struggling with, or we might be struggling with duplicates, or we might be struggling with just overall data quality. This is a cool tool that you guys could potentially use in order to analyze, what's your data look like. It also can insert test data that's AI driven that tries to make it look like your production data as well. So it's got a lot of cool tools. We've worked with these guys for a while now, and they're offering in conjunction with us to do these free data quality assessments. And for the most part, one of the biggest hurdles that we find on a lot of these projects is, regardless of all the fun tools we buy, how cool your app looks, the UI UX, it all comes down to the data. And if the data isn't good, the project is, bound to have hiccups, if not outright fail. And I'm sure a lot of people on this call have had some horror stories about that going in. So guys, definitely give us a reach out if you guys are interested in this and want to take a look at your data. If you have some questions offline, I know we started a little bit late, so we're a little crunched for time here about how to set up these apps and move along this. We also offer free, Heroku health checks as well here at RadialSpark. We have no problem sitting down with you guys and going over your architecture, going over some of your needs, and providing some feedback or architecture support from there on. We got one question. Great call. Hey guys, thanks so much for the compliments. I really appreciate it. Thomas and Kyra, thank you guys for chiming in. Josh, I'm going to hand it back to you since I know we're 3 minutes over time. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, we'll be doing some follow-up. This call was recorded. We can send you over a copy of the recording too. And any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out to Caroline, Janine, Britton, Madison, one of us who reached out to you, or my email address. I'll type it in the chat as well. So thanks.
Yeah, guys. Yep. And so this document will go out. It's got some other stuff in there too, a couple of ebooks that we wrote, our contact information. And so guys, don't hesitate to reach out to anyone here or at Salesforce. We're here to support you guys and look at leveraging these tools and help you guys do more with your investment.
Yep. And again, for those Heroku health checks, for the data health checks, we are offering those as a free service. So if you or one of your customers is struggling with it, you can reach us directly at engage@radialspark.com. We can help you with the courtesy Heroku setup. It does not cost anything to hook up to Active Prime's tool to get a report on your data health. So we'll see you through that process, get you set up, and then get you the strategic advisement based on your data situation. So reach us at engage@radialspark.com. I will be sharing this link with Josh, who will disseminate it to everybody who joined today. So you'll be able to refer back to this in more detail as well.
Great.
With that, I'll put a pin in it.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.